This podcast is part of the Game and Entertainment Network. Visit tgenetwork.net to find the latest episodes from all our shows.
It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belgast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 198. Tonight I'm joined by Ashgar.
Hello.
Grace.
Hello.
Kodra.
Hi.
Tam.
Hello.
And Thalen.
Hi there.
I didn't even do anything.
Your light went on, so I thought maybe I just missed you say something. Anyway, so last week people recorded a show without me, so that was cool. I was very impressed with how smoothly that went. So I am totally not an important member of this podcast. Tonight we have a handful of topics. Kodra, you have been playing a lot more Bloodborne.
Yeah. So I picked it back up, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I sort of got acquainted with where I was, which was right before Rom the Vacuous Spider. And I remember, dying a bunch to it, but I have played a bunch of more Souls games in the intervening time, and so it only took me 4 attempts to finally get him down. That game, right after Rom the Vacuous Spider, escalates its horror motif quite a lot.
Really?
Yes. There are a bunch of places where you used to see, random magical effects that were going off. And now when you go to those places, instead you see giant, what I've been describing as the head of a Cthulhu, the body of a spider, and the hands of a human. Creatures.
That's creepy.
Yeah, right? Creatures that are just hanging on buildings, looming over you, casting spells at you. And then you start to hear, you get a message that you need to go and, end the nightmare. And, you must, it's, I can't remember the exact line, but it's you must defeat the infant of the nightmare. And you just hear this, eerie baby crying periodically in the world now. No matter where you are. It sounds close by.
That's just disturbing.
It is disturbing. And then...
There's a lot of things you could do that would be unsettling, but that seems just really unsettling.
It's very unsettling. The world has shifted. I apparently stopped the game right before it shifted into a whole lot of unsettling stuff going on. And the world becomes, the places you go become a lot weirder. Previously, when you killed somebody, they stayed dead, right? The game is very hard, but if you kill a townsfolk, you're not going to have to fight them again until you, rest at a bell or you die. But now, you start hearing bells in the distance as well, and then when the bells ring, anything that you've killed comes back to life. And this is, if you are anywhere close to these things when they're coming back to life, it's usually 4 different things attacking you, which will probably kill you.
What a horrible night to have a curse.
Yeah, what a horrible night to have a curse. So what you find if you push far enough is there are bell ringers, and you have to kill the ladies ringing the bells to stop this behavior. All right, so that's very frustrating. But I continue playing, dying more than I have in a pretty long time in a Souls game, and I eventually get to an area where you hear a bell ring, and it just says, "A sinister bell has begun ringing." And then, if somebody is queued up for PvP, you have to fight somebody in PvP.
Whoa.
Which is the first time in the entire game that there has been, non-opt-in PvP.
Yeah.
But this stops if you can find the woman ringing the bell and kill her. they have really successfully done a good job at making these bell ringers like the most feared enemies in the game. I found that really interesting.
They're kind of like those the drummers from Zul'Aman. They're like, when one's going off, like, everyone stop what you're doing and go kill the drummer, or we're gonna get like the entire zone pulled down on us.
Yeah. I'm now at the last fight, which has escalated in difficulty from the previous fights quite a bit, so I'm still working on it. I do have a complaint, which apparently is a pretty frequent complaint. This game does not do a good job at supplying you with health potions at the end of the game. I frequently...
Are they craftable or farmable or anything like that?
I mean, they drop off of certain mobs. You can purchase them from a store for a ridiculous number of souls. Blood echoes. Souls. But mostly what you... like, for up to a certain point in the game, it didn't really matter because everything was dropping potions. And so you were typically able to just stay in potions throughout the game. But at the end, they stopped dropping potions. So, like, when you run out, you have to go back to the very start and grind your way through a whole bunch of really easy mobs to get potions again.
That sounds slightly miserable.
It's a common complaint.
I can understand why. It's fun in the sense that it lets me see just how powerful I've become. Like, I am able to fly through this area that I used to have to take with a grain of caution, and now I just don't.
But I feel like that's the sort of thing that's fun for like a little while, but when you have to repeatedly grind it, it loses some charm.
Absolutely does.
Yeah.
But they have done a very, very good job at presenting me with like horrific monsters that I feel like I haven't really seen before. Like, there's a lot of, and granted, this is a horror game from a Japanese company, and they are definitely doing like they are doing an interesting fusion of like traditional Gothic horror, traditional Lovecraftian horror, and then with an added layer of the like body horror that you see in a lot of Japanese media. It's incredibly unsettling, which I know I have talked about how I don't like horror games. I think I just don't like jump scares.
I mean, jump scares, I don't know, like are kind of a cheap trick.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like jump scares, and when I know I'm playing a horror game, I am terrified I'm going to get jump scared. Because, like, they're 100% effective on me, but, like, I don't actually enjoy the experience of being, like, frightened via a jump scare. Like, that's not fun for me.
I mean, I can remember, like, and I know, Thalen, you've played a lot of this game in the past, Clive Barker's The Undying.
Yeah.
That was a game that was just really unsettling. Like, It was a horror game, absolutely, but it was just unsettling.
Yeah, it wasn't about... It was about just this nonstop creepiness and the ability to turn on basically a third eye style of vision that gave you even more creepiness, and you like hear things, but it wasn't really about jump scares. I don't like jump scares either. Like, I'm fine with... I don't mind horror at all. I like good horror. Like, I mean, Hellraiser is one of my all-time favorite movies, but I hate jump scares. They're lazy. I think that's part of it, is they're lazy.
Event Horizon, From the Mouth of Madness? Those are great films that are just insanely creepy and unsettling. And granted, one is space Lovecraft and one is like traditional Lovecraft, but
yeah,
Bloodborne is one of those games I don't want to go back to. Mostly, like, I want to spend more time in a Souls game after getting used to the loop of Monster Hunter. And not that they're the same, and I'm not saying Monster Hunter is a Soulsian game, but there is a certain similar loop of failing and learning and failing and learning, and the thing that's actually improving is you, not necessarily your gear that much. Now, granted, yes, your gear is improving in Monster Hunter, and it becomes laughable when you take on your late gear against like a low rank early thing, but
poor Grey Jagras. Poor Great Jagras.
But I also feel like all of the things I've found difficult in Monster Hunter were situations where I improved, not necessarily the gear improved.
Yeah, and that's definitely a very Bloodborne Souls thing. You will learn how to play these games. I mean, it's not necessarily like, oh, you're gonna get good, but like, I feel like I need to talk about like the culture whenever I talk about a Souls game, because get good is the common phrase. There are so many things in Souls games that are designed to make them easier, and you do have to like learn what those are and like explore the systems, because there's actually quite a few of them. But like the stuff you see, like the super serious people playing where they're just using like a big long sword and nothing else, that's probably the hardest way to play these games.
I feel like the whole get good culture, though, is extremely toxic.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I have reached this pinnacle, and because of that, everyone else should have to reach this pinnacle and do all the things I had to do to get here. I mean, and I saw it in EQ, and I saw it in WoW rating, and I've seen it in Final Fantasy serious rating, and it's just a culture that I'm not a huge fan of, and honestly, like, that has been a bit of a turnoff from the Souls games in general for me, is the fact that I know that's a prevalent side of that culture. Let's revel in how hard this thing is, and how good I am now that I'm the master of this hard thing. Whereas I think, like, there's a really interesting game there, if you can look past that shell. I don't know, like the whole let's ram our faces against the cheese grater because it's hard and it's painful isn't exactly a thing that, like, I'm a huge fan of.
No, like, I can enjoy that sometimes depending on the game and the situation. I'm just not a fan of doing that thing and then turning around and berating other people because they had a hard time doing that thing.
Right. I mean, I've done some stupid nonsense in my time, but I also didn't exactly expect everyone else to do that nonsense. In fact, most of the time, I'm actively telling them, don't ever do that thing. It was silly.
But then people do that thing.
Then people do that thing, yeah. People don't listen to me.
It is interesting how these games sort of... I'm used to games having a very, very structured way that you are supposed to come towards an encounter. And I feel like Souls games try and tell you a whole bunch of things you can do at the beginning of the game, but if you follow what... When I first played Demon Souls, I thought, because I had recently played Assassin's Creed, I thought the way you play this game is through, like, carefully timed parries and attacks. And that's theoretically a way you could play, but I would not recommend anyone who's starting off a Souls game focus on that as their way of, like, getting through it. Because that's, like, one of the highest timing requirements in all of the games. It's very much a game that is not... It is happy with you killing things whatever way possible. And
which honestly gets me back to, like, one of the things I dig about Monster Hunter, in that there's lots of different play styles. And it seems like there's lots of different ways to play Soulsian games.
There are a ton of different ways to play Soulsian games. Absolutely.
So, to crudely segue, the Spring Festival is going on right now in Monster Hunter World. And my pig is now a bee?
Yes. And your handler is also now
a bee?
Some sort of bug. A bee? A butterfly? I'm not sure.
Wasp? I don't know. Maybe?
Apparently flowers and insects is the theme of this festival.
I don't know if the handler thing is permanent, but supposedly Poogie is permanent.
I think the handler costume is only available during the duration of the festival.
It's also available in the store as DLC if you like it enough to buy it permanently.
Ah, of course.
I've bought a lot of DLC for this game just because I want to entice Capcom to keep doing stuff for this game. And all of their DLC packages are, like, really cheap. They're nonsense, like stickers and things like that, but they're really cheap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and, like, backgrounds for your guild card and stuff.
And, you know, Shoryuken and Hadouken.
Yeah, and also, as part of the festival, like almost every event that has happened in the game up to this point is back. So you can get the things that you missed, like the Ryu costume.
We need to do that thing.
Yeah.
Like I want to go in with an actual group of people because
that quest is kind of miserable. So
can you take more than 2? Because I know the Vespoid one.
No, you can take 4.
Okay. I've done the Vespoid one a couple of times because I figured Vespoids are easy, and that one you can only take 2.
No, like the Ryu one is. It's one of the special arenas. Well, yeah, but you also like have to pick one of, I think, 5 weapons that are available.
Yeah,
hammer is one of them, and there's a slope in the arena, so that checks out.
Yeah, can you stack like multiple people on the same weapon?
Yes.
Oh, okay, well then it's hammer all the way.
Hammer, hammer, hammer.
Yeah, I feel like hammer all the way is the appropriate response there.
That sounds reasonable.
I know greatsword is there, longsword is not. Were longsword available, I probably would have tried to pug this thing.
Are dual blades?
I don't remember. Of the weapons I would use, like I remember greatsword and hammer.
Like it's a specific, of each of those weapons.
Right, it's a fixed loadout. Like they give you armor and weapons, so you just play their thing.
Your 5 weapon options are greatsword, dual blades, hammer, gun lance, and heavy bowgun.
If I have to take their weapon, I probably take hammer then.
I feel like the other big thing of importance this holiday event is the really awesome greatsword that's available.
It is pretty cool.
There's a weapon contest a little while ago, and the winner was a greatsword called the Wyvern Ignition, which is a rocket-powered greatsword.
It sets the ground on fire and stuff.
Yeah, while you're charging it, the flames, where they come in contact with the ground, set it on fire briefly. It's amazing effects-wise and design-wise, and everything about it is just great. Including the stats, it's currently the best greatsword in the game.
And it honestly solved my problem of what greatsword do I craft for myself.
Yeah, it sounds like it'll solve my problem of that too.
Yeah, and the event that you need to do...
Make this one.
The event you need to do to make it is pretty easy.
Yeah, it's low rank.
It's low rank
like
Rathalos
5-star.
and Palumu.
In the normal arena. Again, the one with the slope in it.
It's like, just make sure you put on your poison immunity and go to town.
And if you really want to be cheap, you can shut the gate and just kill Lumu and then kill Rathalos.
I didn't see the lever to close the gate during that quest. I don't think it ever comes up. Maybe I just missed it, though.
I thought it prompted... I killed it fast, and I don't know if there was time for it to come up.
Yeah, I don't think I remember seeing the lever any of the times we were in there. But
yeah, Thalen and I ended up being on at the same time, and I think we each soloed one and then ran it a bunch of times together. It's an entertaining fight. It shocks me that almost every time I've taken it down, Lumu is the last to fall.
Lumu is less in your face than Rathalos is.
Yeah.
So while it does have less health, it also tries to float out of the way sometimes.
Until you want to skin the Rathalos. Then it's going to straight up just bop on top of your head. But I know the sunglasses are up now, and that was one that I somehow missed. I think there's another piece of gear that I missed.
The sealed eye patch was, I think, the game's first 2 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, I wasn't high enough for that one. Yeah, I need to figure out which one that is and go ahead and do that.
There's the Blossom armor.
I've not gotten any of those tickets. I still have not gotten the one that's supposed to be given to me for free, so I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, because you should get one from your login bonus every day. And then there's also the bounties, the limited bounties, change daily for the duration of the festival. And every single one of those gives a ticket in addition to some other stuff as its reward. So the one yesterday was, one bounty was do a challenge, one was do an event, and one was hunt a Devil Joe.
Today it's bounty. Today it's rather do an event, do a challenge, kill a Lumu.
And then there's
what
also
is a challenge?
The arena challenges. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Ones with preset loadouts, limited weapons.
Yeah. And then there's also one event quest that isn't available in the US, except it kind of is, but you have to SOS into it.
Did you manage to do that at any point today?
Is that the Mega Man one?
No, it's
Mega Man one's up next week.
It's the Universal Studios Japan collaboration.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, I missed that too.
And there's a longsword and armor and a palico set from it.
Oh, man, I want a longsword.
But you can, assuming they haven't, done something to stop you being able to do this.
No, you can straight do
SOS
it.
into it, and it's just kill 3 Great Jagras.
I remember, Eric's talking about that he was able to SOS his way into it. Like back when it first showed up, and I forgot that was even a thing.
Right. Yeah.
So did the Ryu thing open up for people who don't have the save file?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It was there for me. So, I mean, I haven't actually done it yet.
I had the save file, but I never could convince anybody to do it.
I will happily do it.
The Ryu costume. So yeah, now I'll have to SOS roulette my way into the Universal Studios one if I can. Because if there's a snazzy longsword, I need it.
It's pretty fancy looking.
That's all there is. I mean, I'm pretty devoted to my longswords.
It's pretty fancy looking, but unlike the contest winner greatsword, it's not actually good.
One of these days, they'll give us transmog ability.
Mm-hmm.
We can actually use some of this really cool looking stuff that's, got crap for stats.
And I'd be just fine with more layered options that we could make. But I think they've come out and said that they're not going to do any more layered armor anytime soon.
Aww.
But, I mean... So I guess I'll only ever be a samurai?
Yes, those gloves are handy, though.
And the pants. Also the pants.
I've worn a lot of the pants, because there's some hideous-looking pants.
But the gloves are nice if you are stuck otherwise wearing the Teostra gloves, and you don't want to be red.
You don't want to be red? I like the Teostra set.
Sure, if you like being
all
red.
It's all gear punky.
I like the Teostra set, but if it doesn't match anything else I'm wearing, I like it less.
I don't know, I feel like the set that I've got right now that's like the tribal chest and a couple pieces of the samurai and the toaster gauntlets are like this weird post-apoc survival look. But anyway, if you missed any of this stuff in Monster Hunter, I highly suggest you check out the events because there's a ton of them right now, and you should be able to get a lot of that done.
And soon the Mega Man event will be live. You can turn your Palico into Mega Man. I think that's in a week.
Also, great sword. That great sword is amazing. Just to reiterate. So, another thing that has happened since the last time we recorded a normal show is Tam and I have spent some time in, for lack of a better term, nostalgia-based MMOs. Throwbacks. So, I have been playing a lot of Project Gorgon, and he played quite a bit of Shroud of the Avatar, and I also played some Shroud of the Avatar.
We've both played both.
Yeah.
How was that?
I'm pretty deeply hooked on Project Gorgon, and I am pretty not deeply hooked on Shroud of the Avatar. I don't even know if a refund works correctly on Steam for that game, since there's a secondary account. But it's almost to that level for me, just because it did not feel good at all.
It does not feel good.
Shame.
I don't know how so much was spent on that game, and so many otherwise talented people were working on it, and it ended up feeling super kludgy.
Yeah. It would probably be much better if it didn't feel so kludgy, but it just moment to moment doesn't feel good.
It has probably hands down one of the worst feeling interfaces that I've seen in a long time. I don't know, it honestly kind of reminds me of the way that Neverwinter 2 felt interface wise.
Oh man, I think it's worse than Neverwinter 2. I mean, it's got every single thing you might loot, and there's a lot of them, opens a separate loot window, which you have to close manually.
And your inventory system, I at first thought was like a stat window, because it's a list of items, but just like a text list of items, and it's not obvious, how things are entered in it. And dialogue is awkward too.
Dialogue is very dialogue. I think dialogue is the most creative part of what's going on in there.
Yeah.
It's sort of combining the keyword system of tyranny with the keyword system from EverQuest. So you can type in what you'd like to say or ask an NPC, or you can click on keywords that it'll let you know what words they key off of, and you can click on those to either get more information or whatever. It's not super elegant, but it is at least somewhat interesting. You can get people to talk to you about things.
The other problem that I had was that it didn't seem like it was very clearly marked what NPC was what name.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't tell you an NPC's name until you get their name from them. It just gives them a generic name, which I think you can turn off in options somewhere, but until you ask them what their name is and they tell you what their name is, their nameplate doesn't show up as their actual name.
Yeah, and when you ask them, they're like, "Thanks for asking."
Yeah. It's awkward.
I mean, that's straight out of Ultima.
There's a lot that is straight out of Ultima. I mean,
Name.
But the problem is it feels like the UI is straight out of an old Ultima game.
It's true. It definitely has Richard Garriott's obsession with, you're a person in the real world and you get sucked into your computer into this other magic land.
Oh yeah.
That's just like every single Ultima game ever. Was kind of tired back then.
Yeah, he's definitely really into that concept.
Way too into it. I really didn't need this opening cutscene about finding runes on the dark web. No.
So how many NPCs in the game are Richard Garriott in different clothing?
I don't know. I haven't run into that yet. At least as blatantly as I otherwise could have. But I also didn't last very long just because
I got to the first town and talked to a bunch of people, and just the interaction of opening and closing windows just wore me out.
Yes, you're opening and closing so many windows so often, and it's it's awkward. So we both kind of checked out of that one, and sort of as we had this sort of cultural exchange where Belle tried out Shroud of the Avatar and had pretty much the same experience I did, and so I picked up Project Gorgon.
And we had vastly different experiences.
Yes. So, I don't know if I should start with the bad or the good.
I don't know, but the way our interactions with this game are entirely dependent upon the vast difference in the way that you and I approach games.
Yes.
We after a day or so of talking, we figured out, that's absolutely what happened here. Is I only care about the mechanical loop of a game until I care about the mechanical loop of the game, and then I start to care about the world. It's like, I don't remember exactly how I put it the other day, but it's like, I'm not 100% sure if I want to be invested in it, in caring about the world until I at least like the game mechanically.
Yeah. And I need a mechanical and a world hook. I need those things to be happening at the same time.
And I feel like this is not the only time that this has happened. I got completely into Destiny, but the only reason why I dealt with any of the nonsense of looking through the Grimoire cards and stuff like that is because I was mechanically hooked on that game.
Yeah.
The world itself was kind of nonsense, and it was silly that I had to go to the levels that I did to find information about it, but I was already sold at that point. So I was a denizen of that game, and I might as well figure out what's going on.
And so as a result, you hopped into Project Gorgon and made a character without really, whatever. This character
Didn't read
looks
anything.
Cool. This character looks cool. It's a human. Done. Go. And I made the mistake of reading the text in character creation. And this was a mistake. This is a mistake that has tainted the entire rest of this game for me. Because the way character creation is set up, and it's not the most intuitive interface, but I like to read backgrounds on things. Before I pick a race for a game, I want to know what that game thinks about its races. I want to know what kind of experience I'm going to hop into. If I play an elf, are we talking wood elves? Are we talking high elves? Are we talking dark elves? Are we talking some other kind of elf? Are humans what kind of role do humans play? Like I just like to know these things to kind of get a sense of what kind of character I'm getting into. So the way this is structured is there is a brief overview of each race, and then you can click on little arrows to go left and right that tell you what all of the other races, including one that's not playable, orcs, think of that race. There's 3 playable races, and there's 5 text boxes per race. So a total of 15. Of those 15, 11 are talking about the sexual habits of that race. It's gross.
It seems highly unnecessary.
It's unnecessary. In some cases, it's downright offensive. And like I read a certain line and they talk about describing elves, and I was like, nope, I'm done, and just left the game. And didn't come back to it for a few days because it just squeaked me out enough that I didn't want to give it any more of my time. But I've also made games. Like I have had cringy alpha text that just hasn't had an editing pass. And it shouldn't ever be live. It shouldn't ever be in front of players. Absolutely, you should make sure that your cringy placeholder text gets out of the public eye. It never even sees the public eye. But some people are game dev noobs. That's clearly the case with this team. I'll hold my nose, create a character, and hop in. And mechanically, it's not a bad game. I mean, the way I describe both it and Shroud of the Avatar is they look and feel like your memory of EverQuest.
Right, and I guess that's the thing that's more interesting, because it's not EverQuest. Like,
no.
But it feels like I felt when I was playing EverQuest.
Yes. It feels like your memory of EverQuest. And your memory of EverQuest is wrong. Like, let me disabuse that notion immediately. If you actually hop into actual EverQuest, you'll be like, wow, this game looks and feels like absolute trash.
This is the worst thing ever. And I've done it. Like, I've played on a time-limited server, and it was miserable. God, this game is horrible.
Oh, it's awful. And so this is not that. This is way better. But it hits all of those like, oh, hey, this is what I remember EverQuest being like, even though it's not. As it turns out, our standards have gone up, but...
And from what I understand, this one's actually a little bit closer to Asheron's Call, which is a game I never actually played.
Yeah, it's similar to Asheron's Call. It does the thing that I've gotten on my soapbox more than a few times about, which is it gets rid of the idea of levels, of character levels, just entirely. You level up your skills, and you level up your skills by using your skills.
I do like that.
And you level up tons and tons and tons of skills. There's like 40 or something on the starting island.
You level up dying.
So
Death is a skill.
Can you theoretically level up every single skill and get them all maxed out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's not like a total that you.
Nope.
Yeah,
because if you were insane like that and you want to level up everything, then it'll let you do it. And I'm leveling a bunch of disconnected stuff right now because it's a thing.
And the limiting factor is a lot of your like combat related skills are, I mean, you can't use staff skill. You can't use unarmed skills if you're holding a weapon, for example. You can't use shield skills if you don't have a shield on. And so you're limited by, okay, I am using sword and bow because I can hold a sword and bow in my hands.
You can't use spider skills if you haven't been cursed into a giant spider.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, okay, I've gotten turned into a big spider. I can level up all these spider skills, but I'm not leveling up my sword skills because the spider can't hold a sword.
Man, you can turn into a deer and you have deer skills. And I've picked up weapons that require like 5 ranks of deer.
What?
Yeah, there's all kinds of item requirements that are like, oh, hey. And item requirements are totally skill-based, which makes some amount of sense. You need some amount of whatever skill to do that. And they have there's some cute puzzles on the some cute open world puzzles on the starter island. I particularly like there's a thing that you've got to break that's immune to physical damage. And so you've got to go looking for some way to cause magical damage to it or non-physical damage. And there's like
there are multiple paths, that'll do.
There's like 3 or 4 different ways. You can learn some basic crafting, you can pick up all kinds of random stuff. There's a lot of interesting skills.
You can yell at it.
Yep. But unfortunately, it is a very like 1999 throwback kind of game, and feels like it comes out of my memories of 1999, but so does the writing. And sometimes it's funny. Most of the time, it's just not. Like
a lot of the writing reminds me of some of the worst books from Morrowind.
Yes.
Ouch.
Yes.
Ouch.
Now, there's interesting stuff going on, and some of it is kind of cool, and some of it contradicts the racial bios that I didn't read going into it. Because really, I was given the choice of a human, an elf, or a cat person, Rakshasa. And one, I've never trusted Rakshasa in any game that's had them, so that was out.
Wise.
And I don't like elves, so that was out. So pretty much I was going to play a human, because humans had beards. So that was the calculus that went into me deciding what to play, and that's literally as long as it took.
Yeah.
So I didn't read any of the character bios. So it's like when Tam was telling me this stuff, I was like, "Where's this even from?" He goes, "Oh, there's character bios, and like there's little tabs that you can click on." So I didn't know they
read
existed.
the text that the game provided me, and wish I hadn't.
One of the things that I think that this thing does that is really cool is pretty much every NPC that you encounter has faction, for lack of a better term. Like, they have a favor system, and it's not like I am gaining favor with this specific or group. I am gaining favor with this one person, and like it dictates how they will interact with me.
Yeah, and that can be anything from doing quests for them to giving them gifts, and you have to suss out what kinds of gifts they like.
And sometimes these things like gate, like if you want to be a bard, you need to go find a bard in game to teach you how to be a bard. And there's so far I've encountered 2 different bard NPCs, and you just have to get to, I think, comfortable level, which is the first skill up in faction, before they'll start teaching you anything.
Yeah, you can also like hang out with NPCs when you log out, and if you spend a certain amount of time logged out, when you come back, you'll get some whatever relating to that NPC.
And some of those are actually really important items that you'll want, because there's one of those that happens on the newbie island that I didn't get while I was on the newbie island, that I had to find my way back to the newbie island to go get, because playing with mangy wolves can give you lice, and the only way to remove that is with a lice comb that you get from a quest. But it's a lot of nonsense cause and effect sort of stuff like that happens in the game, and I find it greatly entertaining, but I also have spent a lot of time playing around with EverQuest emulators, so I feel like maybe I'm the exact right demographic for this sort of thing, but it's not going to be for everyone. Like, unless you have a hankering to play a game that makes you feel like you did back when you played EverQuest, that is not whatever the latest Brad McQuaid game is.
Are you saying Pantheon is not a game you're interested in playing?
So, I am interested in it on some level. I am not interested in the sales pitch of return to a time where you had forced grouping. Like, that is not a thing I want to return to, ever.
Right. Yeah, for everything. All things. Forced grouping. What super frustrated me, and what I wish I liked this game more than I do, because it is absolutely proving out a theory that I've been espousing for years. And it is an explicitly PvE only game.
Yay.
And
it's about time.
I like and conceptually would like to support those things, but I can't support their writing.
And I feel like the writing is basically the equivalent of programmer art, because it's a husband and wife team that once upon a time worked on what game did they work on? We talked about it earlier. Not EverQuest, but
Asheron's Call.
Asheron's Call, yes, there you go. Sorry, I just blanked out there. But yeah, I guess it's a husband and wife that once upon a time worked on Asheron's Call, and then they've created this as kind of a love letter to that game. But it has programmer writing, kind of like it has, some people have programmer art.
The difference is programmer art is not making gross sex jokes, usually.
I mean, honestly, like, it kind of reminds me at times of how out of place the BDSM chapter of Wizard's First Rule seems now.
Wait, what?
I mean,
Thank you for reminding me of that.
I'm just saying, like you're reading along, and then all of a sudden, what?
Yeah,
It's kind of that thing going on. But mechanically, I enjoy the game.
it's worth pointing out that said chapter of Wizard's First Rule served as a warning that there was only going to be more and more of this as the series went on.
yeah, I know.
What's this from?
Wizard's First Rule.
It's not.
An
Very
otherwise
kind.
really good book.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
great up to that point, and then
Mm,
and it became clear as the series went on that that was the concept that he was really interested in focusing in on, laser-like.
So another conversation that happened this week is the way that games start. And I, unfortunately, missed almost all of this conversation. So, Ash...
That's okay, we can have it now.
Okay.
So, earlier this week, let me back up a bit. Pillars of Eternity 2 is a game that is coming out soon-ish. It was supposed to come out this month and got delayed by a month. Well, it's yet to be seen whether it will actually come out next month, but it's neither here nor there. It is a sequel to the original Pillars of Eternity, and takes your decisions made in that game and imports them, even though it is only sort of a sequel, involving the same main character, but not directly following the events of the game. Not directly following the events of the first game, just taking place after them. So I started playing Pillars 1 again, because I played that game a bit, and that game, I think I started it 4 times and made it to the first town and stopped playing. After the first town, it picks up by quite a bit. You get your keep. You start learning that, hey, there's actual plot to be had here. And it's actually an interesting game to play. But until you get to the first town, you have sort of the adventuring tutorial where you have a map in which you need to find some berries and fight some bandits, and then you get tossed into a cave in which you need to solve some fairly simple puzzles. Maybe fight some more things depending on how bad you are at solving puzzles. And then you get tossed basically into the count. Your starting companions get killed. You have to find some new ones. What it really had me thinking of was, I realize I use this as an example almost every time this comes up, is getting to the Citadel in Mass Effect 1.
Ha!
Mm.
I feel like getting through the Citadel, because the Citadel's also kind of a slog.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, it's the point
At
at
the very
which it
start of this
opens
game,
up.
you have these options, theoretically, and that you can do all these things. There's a million people to talk to. There's a bunch of areas you could go to, but there's one thing you should do. In the case of Pillars of Eternity, you should go to sleep, at which point your dreams will get you back on your way on the main quest. In Mass Effect, you need to go find Fist and get him to tell you what he knows, or get Rex to get him to tell you what he knows, or don't do that thing. Either way.
There's a lot of games that have these slogs that come up, like, Dragon Age Inquisition and the Hinterlands.
Mm-hmm.
That's infamous enough that I'm going to keep using it as a point of reference for a particular sort of starting problem. But as a counterpoint, I was thinking a bit about Monster Hunter World, since I was playing that as part of the Spring Festival. Monster Hunter World has sort of a movement tutorial at best of you getting dumped off on Zora Bagdaros. And then you get asked to kill 10 rats. And then you get asked to kill 7 slightly harder rats. And then the game actually starts, and you get a large monster, and you spend the entire rest of the game fighting large monsters.
Yep.
And once you dream in Pillars of Eternity, you spend the rest of the game talking to people and going to places and doing things mostly on your own and following the main plot. It seems like it takes an entirely too long to get into the game proper. And what you're doing along the way is not interesting enough to hold interest.
Yeah. And yeah, this is definitely a recurring problem in a lot of games. I mean, this is why I never made it off of the first planet in Star Ocean 3. Because I poured hours and hours into that game, and I still hadn't gotten to the actual game.
For people unfamiliar, Star Ocean 3 is allegedly a sci-fi game, but near the start, you get kicked off on this medieval backwater planet that you're not supposed to reveal that you will have advanced technology. So you are playing this weird medieval RPG-esque game.
Yep.
Which I do find pretty fun, but it
wasn't
takes
what I signed up for.
Awfully long time. A very, very long time. Like probably 20 or so hours to get off of this planet.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's worse than FF13 is left as an exercise to the listener.
So, again, my biggest point of comparison is Mass Effect 1. Pillars of Eternity, I don't know much about. In Mass Effect 1, you're intentionally starting off as kind of this nobody.
Pillars of Eternity also has you as a nobody.
And I feel like a lot of these games want you to feel like a nobody for the first part of the game. And that's boring.
Yeah, it's kind of my I have had my tabletop RPG plots criticized because things happen too fast. I've had people look over my notes and be like, shouldn't your players spend more time doing other stuff before you dive them into the plot? I'm like, no, because if you're going into caves and killing kobolds and rats and stuff that's not interesting just to earn your way to the cool stuff, why waste your time? And that was, it dates back to old quarter munching arcade games where the goal was the cool stuff happened later, but you had to put in a whole bunch of quarters to get there.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like now we've got, games have to have tutorials. Tutorial stuff is great, but that's combined with the feeling like a nobody leads to the temple in Fallout 2, which I don't know if everybody remembers how awful that temple was, but it was a combination of the tutorial and killing giant ants with a spear, and boy, I hope you put some points into melee.
Oof.
It was dreadful.
Neverwinter Nights 2 has the fair, which is similar to that. What, you didn't put any points into ranged weapons? I'm sorry.
Well, and for a while I just thought I hated these games, and then I played Tyranny, and I was like, oh wait, they can be good. Oh
Tyranny
no,
has all the right answers.
Yeah.
Oh no, why is every other game so bad?
Tyranny just skips the nobody phase and puts it as part of character creation.
Yeah.
The end of character creation is, this is how you got famous.
And it works great.
So it can just start you on the plot immediately.
Yeah, and the combat tutorial is, making it into the first outpost, which doesn't take very long. And all of the learning about the world takes place in the little tooltips for the words that get highlighted.
Well, and
which is the best thing ever, and every RPG should do it going forward.
Yeah.
You're also immediately thrust into an interesting situation.
And I sort of just as a sense of balance, okay, I kind of, it's possible to have too much of that. It's possible. I have definitely played games where the game is spending way too much time gushing over what an incredible badass I am, and it doesn't feel believable.
Mm-hmm.
And separating entirely from the mundane everyday is why I checked out of WoW in Burning Crusade, and really never came back fully, because there was always a grounding of no, there's actual people being affected by your actions, regular everyday people whose biggest worry is some bandits. They have cares. The world is a big place, and yes, you're a super turbo badass, but you're not. But there's still these people, and Burning Crusade is no, forget all those people. You're in this other place now, and everybody here is a turbo badass, and you just need to be more turbo than everybody else. And hey, look, there's a city full of these people, and it's just it's that continual plussing up of trying to one-upsmanship over whatever the previous content was. And I feel like it's possible to have too much of that, especially if they hit you too early on. My example here is Rift, where I never really got as into Rift as I wanted to because my place in that world made no sense. Like, you're a time-traveling superhero. Welcome. Now, hang out.
It is interesting how much WoW cities sort of removed themselves from, like, the normal populace. Like, Shatrath was in another world. Dalarian was, like, in the frozen north, floating in the sky.
Now it's above some demon-infested islands floating in the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, rose-tinted glasses and everything, but I do kind of miss, like, hey, we're just adventurers, like, hanging out in an inn in Stormwind.
I guess that piece of it, most of that doesn't bother me. I don't feel strongly about the world in that. But, like, thinking about the starts of games, like, say what you will about something like Diablo. Like, Diablo 3 dumps you immediately into this is what the game is. There's no messing around.
Oh, yeah.
And it's both the story and the combat and the game, which is nice.
I probably had bad expectations going into Diablo 3 because Diablo was a series that other people told me had this incredibly great, fantastic story.
What? Who told you this? They lied.
Like, a lot of people.
People who don't really remember Diablo 2.
No.
Yeah, it's kind of along the same lines as, like, us talking about a game that feels like what we remember EverQuest was. Like, I think we made Diablo out to be this wilder story than it actually was.
I mean, I guess if your frame of reference is Diablo, then yes, Diablo 2 has an amazing, complicated story. Because Diablo didn't have one.
Yeah, but that's some creepy poetry.
You go deeper, and then you kill the butcher, and you kill Diablo.
Yep.
I think a lot of my problems with the beginnings of games goes back to how I approach games in the first place. And if your game starts with a ton of exposition via cutscene or via text on screen that I need to read before I get any mechanical hooks, then my likelihood to bounce off the game is pretty high.
Man, I love FF14. That game has a really slow start.
Yes, it does.
When I first played through that start, I was like, I am sure I'm going to bounce off this. Ash said it was so much better this time, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to bounce off this because this is nonsense and it's unskippable.
Whenever I think about this topic, I also think about Persona 4 a lot because that game takes something like 2 hours until you get to a tutorial fight before you can even, and at least an hour and a half after that before you can make any sort of decisions as to what you're going to do.
Yeah, I feel like they made a good choice with Persona 5 to start you out at the end of the penultimate dungeon and let you actually experience some of the action.
I don't know though, like I put in, remember, at least like 8 hours or something into that game, and I still felt like I was only just starting to get to the actual game.
Yeah, no, it still takes a bit longer to get to the actual game than I ideally would have liked.
And I guess the problem is like I have so many games that I feel like I want to play. So if I'm going to devote to playing a game, it really needs to grab me quickly and like prove to me that my time spent is going to be worth it.
I feel like the Borderlands games are examples of ones that did that well.
Borderlands 1 and 2 had amazing intros that sold me on the world and sold me on the events that happened since the last game, and then laid out a sequence of breadcrumbs that got me in the action pretty quickly.
Yeah, basically, here's the short version of how you got here, now start shooting dudes.
I mean, I feel like Borderlands 1 probably will go down in history as still the best intro to any video game.
I don't know about that.
I was gonna say...
It's an amazing music video!
Oh, okay.
Like, it's so good! And, like, the end of it ends so perfectly as well. Like, it just lands so great. And at least for me, it, like, pumped me up, and I'm like, hell yeah, I want to play this game. Like,
Yeah.
I already feel justified in my $60 purchase by the end of the intro.
Yeah, like I have like on occasion just gone back and watched that intro just because I like that song and I really like it with that intro.
I feel like the original BioShock had a really good intro as well.
BioShock's intro is notable for taking you past and sort of making you see all of the various things in the game. Well, some of the various things in the game that you need to know before you actually encounter them for real.
Right, like, this is an intro that kind of previews everything this world is going to be about.
I mean, Half-Life 1.
I wasn't around for that one.
I mean, Half-Life 2 was pretty good as well, but it was a little bit slow.
Yeah. I mean, Half-Life 1 was also slow because they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, because it was the first.
But I think at least for me with intros, I don't mind being a nobody if I feel competent / powerful. And I don't mind if I feel like I'm a relevant character, like in the world. But if you have neither, that's a downer. It's like, oh, I'm not relevant to this world and I don't have enough agency to be relevant. I just have to like grind my face off until we get to a place where I'm relevant. And like, that's not very fun. I feel like Fallout does this really well. Like, you're kind of a nobody in the world, and you're not very powerful, but in a lot of cases, you come from a vault. And that's, in the world, pretty relevant.
I do feel like, for all of the criticism that I've given it, Fallout 4 has one of the best Fallout intros. Because it starts you off... Well, I mean, A, it starts you off with the rare glimpse into, like, before the Fallout universe began, and B, it starts you off immediately with a mystery to solve.
Yeah, except for me, it's like, as I'm watching this mystery, I'm telling myself, I'm just not going to care about this at all for the longest time.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem a lot of people had. It's like, okay, yes, I guess I need to go find the baby, but I have no attachment to the baby.
I just don't care
about this baby at all.
I would like sell the baby for an iguana steak.
Yeah, the New Vegas intro worked a lot better to get me, because I wanted to find that dude and I wanted to put a bullet in his head.
Yeah, New Vegas definitely grounded me more in the world than Fallout 4 ever did.
Chandler Bing shot me in the head, and I have a problem with this.
But I guess that also highlights the problem that, like, everyone's going to have a slightly different hook that draws them into the world in a new game intro.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any way to make one that is just universally great for all players.
Well, part of the problem that I've seen, the way I've seen people put it, is the difference between Fallout 3 and Fallout 4's openings. Because in both cases, it's very much it's a member of your family is missing, and so the main quest is you need to find them. But the problem is, in Fallout 4, it's very much, your reason for wanting to find them is very constrained. It's, this baby has been kidnapped and I need to rescue them because they are my baby. In Fallout 3, your reason for wanting to find your dad could be like a whole gamut of reasons. It could be that you are, you're worried that something's happened to him and you want to rescue him. It could be that you're furious that he abandoned you and left you in this vault and you want to find him and give him a piece of your mind. And just that ability to decide for yourself what your character's rationale for this is, like, makes a difference.
Yeah.
And it also gives you more range for how you view your character.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I was on board with, hey, I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm going to go find this kid.
Like, I was okay with it, but I also want to, when I play Fallout, I tend to play a good guy character who wants to, help people. And so that fits. But if I want to play an evil rat bastard who's only out for himself, then it's a little harder to rationalize why I would be so concerned about the baby. Or for that matter, why I would have been married and living in a nice suburban house, before the bomb dropped.
Yeah, to some extent, 4 feels like it kind of gave you a backstory that you didn't have much, rooting in yourself. Like, you're a veteran. Like, that's not an option. You're just a veteran.
And in 3, you could be anything. Because, your backstory is that you're a vault dweller, but that's because you were born in the vault. Except that you weren't. But basically 3 only set in stone things that would not be within your character's control anyway. Fallout 4 dictated decisions that your character had been made before you started playing him or her.
Yeah.
But to go back to what I think Ash's original discussion point was, there's a lot of games that are better than their intro would lead you to believe.
I feel like the intro is super important, though.
It's really important.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, it's what gives you purchase in that world.
A really good intro will keep me playing a crap game for longer than I really should. A terrible intro might make me never even get into the good of a really good game.
You really don't get a second chance to make a first impression.
Yeah.
And again, I feel like it goes back to what I said. There are so many games out right now, and there's something like 40 games put on Steam every day.
Yeah, there was absolutely a time, once upon a time, where I reveled in games with long drawn out intros and then long epic sprawling stories and so on. And I still like those, but they also need to be engaging the whole time, because there's a lot of other better things I could be doing with my time. It isn't like, oh, this game is one of the 3 big releases this year, better get my enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, it seems like my time for gaming decreases as the number of games that I would like to play only keeps getting larger and larger.
And I think my biggest problem is I keep returning to games to spend the time that I have that I know I'm going to enjoy, rather than going and trying other things.
Yeah, I'm very much the opposite in that I will try a lot of new things, but in order to ensure that I'm not wasting my time with things, that intro is really important, because if it doesn't hook me, I'm just gonna leave it, and I'm not gonna feel bad about it.
So, one of the things that we are trying to do now is time box our shows in that they only last a certain amount of time. And we're perilously getting close to that border right now. Any other thoughts on this or any of the other topics we've talked about tonight?
Sounds like we're good.
Okay. Well, thanks again for tuning in, and hopefully you enjoyed all the things we talked about this week. And I am sure by doing this whole time boxing thing, it will have left us with some leftover topics for next week. And we will see you then. Good night.
Good night.
Good
Good night.
See you.